Yep.
Excellent. Seamless. A seamless introduction. Excellent. Apologies for that. Things always seem to get a gremlin in the works at the beginning of these sometimes. So as Omar mentioned, thank you and welcome to this presentation. I'm just doing a little precursor before the main event. And yeah, just mentioning why talking about smart homes and why the appeal. So what's a smart home? Well, I guess up until a few years ago, the whole concept of a smart home wasn't even really on the radar for most people. But in a very short period of time, this has changed. Most people have now invited smart tech into their homes in various different forms, normally through simple offerings such as the smart speakers and the video doorbells. And this has acted as quite a good hook for many companies, and it's helped to raise to the public consciousness the possibilities and the solutions that smart connected devices can and do offer. These have evolved into a whole range of different aspects and entire ecosystems, even being able to control the blinds and the shades, interact with the heating and the cooling, your on-site generation and storage, the entertainment, speakers, TVs, etc., etc. Even the environmental controls and the lighting, and fire and security, even linking into your electric vehicles. There was a government poll done in 2020 which looked to seek how people were engaging with these, and quite obviously, as you'd expect, the smart speakers were featuring quite heavily. So 11% of the national represented survey had speakers, and then there was 6% with thermostats, and then you started to get people into the lighting, security, and there started to become a range of standalone devices that were starting to offer smart connectivity as well. A year later, a similar thing, the poll was revisited, and 40% of people that did have a smart device also then had smart lighting, and again, you're starting to see the different range of these devices being adopted. Normally through people that had taken one smart device, it then kind of whetted their appetite for adoption of more and more things. So what's the reason? Why do people like smart technology? Well, again, another YouGov poll showed that nearly 40% of people found that they do make their lives easier. Some of them just said that certain functions were useful for them. A lot of people like the option to be able to use them remotely, particularly with heating and lighting controls, good for security. You start to link in geo-fencing, etc., etc. And they're easy to use. They're really convenient. And you also get the early adopters, the technology lovers, and also the fact they do save people money. So we'll look at a couple of the key benefits. So often they offer energy reductions. They reduce people's carbon footprint by reducing the energy, also the financial savings that are attached to that. There could be an increase in safety, reducing electrical fire risks, and also enhanced security through the different camera systems and the convenience factor. So that was a quick bit of blurb, and I'll now hand you over to Jake and Darren at Scolmore. So thank you very much.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Luke. I think one thing I've got to say is I'm very impressed with his title, Jake. I thought I had a snazzy title, but yours is absolutely superb, Luke. Thank you very much for that. Many of you we've seen Jake and myself before. We love getting out and doing maybe that we as much as we can. We share before. We're now in different colour shirts, so for a good reason. We've been the Scolmore group, and we're going to be here today talking about some of the smart installations. Thank you, Luke, for giving us a heads up on really looking at is coming from, where it's come from as well. We're going to be looking at that and how community just going and selecting some smart technology may actually be quite limiting. And when we look at the advantages of smart, quite restricting if you haven't, such as you mentioned there, it can be really got the correct protocols. Put questions over in the field there. And again, when you're putting them in, either simply tap them all as it comes. We can do pick them up, we go along, we can take crumbs or just bits bit by bit, can't we? Sorry,
Yeah.
so I'm looking over there. Jake's just sat over there to keep the social distancing. We're on two, so apologies for that one. So yeah, some of the advanced.
So quite a few of them there. He stated that, you know, there's a lot of safety aspects to it, energy saving as well. The big one that we would like to try and focus on there as well, Darren, is helping, you know, the vulnerable people that may be in homes, whether that's elderly. This gives them the ability to stay in their homes longer. So whether that's, you know, having smart cameras in there so that you can dial in from outside, or whether you can, you know, you can set it so that it comes in over a period of time, so it's not on and off constantly, causing that heating and cooling within the property.
Yeah, there's a big. I mean, I think the one thing that Jake's picked up there is living is a big area where we're seeing smart technology installed. Installations, so some housing associations are looking to install pretty much in the properties that they know and trust, rather than, as we seem to do, we seem to take them out and say, look, you were better off in a retirement home or something like that. Again, all of a sudden, then it does cause a bit of a problem. What we will do is we'll start to look at some of the options here, so we can start to look at where it can be used a little bit later on. We want to really understand, though, is why is this smart revolution happening in the first place? So I think there, if we start to understand that the smart revolution is happening now, just because manufacturers like us have the opportunity to provide to a market, as you saw there from some of the graphs that were there, it was. Swap microphones, mate. Is that something I want to do? We can take that.
I think it's back on now.
Okay.
No, it's
right.
not.
Right. So again, just to confirm exactly where we are with this, you can take the smart technology and pretty much install it anywhere, because manufacturers such as us have made it so that you can do that. If we're looking at how it works and some of the green credentials, it really comes down to why is it considered greener, a smart installation? Probably because its flexibility, its functionality, and the fact that through the communications protocol, you can start to link it all together. So devices can now all of a sudden, rather than being separate, can work together to ensure that you are getting the best out of them, either the best functionality or you're getting the best energy use. So if you've ever been on a car journey and you get somewhere and you think, oh, did we leave this on? Is that on? Is that on? Applications allow you to all of a sudden now start to switch things on or off without actually being there, or you can do one button to switch all off. Traditionally, these could have been done, but you had to be in the location to actually take control of a lot of these. So when we start to talk about communications protocol, there's a number of things to consider, Jake, isn't there?
There is, yeah. So we'll start from the very beginning, where connectivity came from. So we're starting right the way back. It was sort of infrared when you was typically using that for maybe transferring small amounts of data, or whether it was remote from a TV, for example, which is still being used. The technology is still there, but it's moved on quite a bit since then. We started to move away from infrared to Bluetooth. Bluetooth is fantastic. It works absolutely seamlessly with lots of different devices. I use mine for my headphones all the time, with connectivity in my car maybe, but there never seems to be any problems with that, and that just keeps getting better and better and stronger. The only downfall with that Bluetooth connectivity is the range. As most of you will know, as soon as you go out of sort of a 10-meter window, it sort of breaks down from there.
Yeah. Now again, Jake was saying that that Bluetooth technology was introduced quite a while ago, and it was. I think Nokia first brought it in, and again, it was thought that it was just going to be here for a little bit, and then it was going to simply fade away. And it hasn't. Our reliance upon it has been enormous, really. We all rely heavily upon Bluetooth for certain aspects of our smart integration. Looking at moving on from one of there, and Jake was great. The distance is probably going to be one of the problems there. And looking at taking it a step higher, we started to move into smart installations with RF, with radio frequency as another communications protocol. This sort of meant that we were starting to have all of a sudden up to distances typically of 100 meters with radio frequency. So we would have a transmitter and a receiver. These devices would be typically about 100 meters apart. Now this 100 meters will only be clear line of sight, won't they, Jake?
Yeah, so if there's anything in the way, whether that's any sort of materials, i.e. plasterboard, metal strapping in walls, which is a big one at the moment that's causing a lot of new homeowners a lot of problems with their Wi-Fi as well. Glass, whether it's steel or anything like that, Darren, that's going to cause a massive impact on that range. There is some figures out there that we've got as well that we don't have on screen at the moment, but I'm sure we can have a little look on the website at some point to show you where to get that information from. But it does give the percentages of what type of material deteriorates the signal.
Yeah, and again, it's things that stone. If you're putting any metal in there, which is Jake just alluded to there, is some of our construction methods now in the UK will actually become a barrier to us using these smart technologies. Effectively, you're creating some sort of big metal cage and then coating it in plasterboard, aren't you? Which again is going to be a problem. But some of the stone buildings that we've got, and again, RF does have its limitations, so it starts to weaken the signal. So it's longevity. So the distance between it is going to start to be dramatically reduced when you start to put some of these problems in there. One of the solutions that we use this for is gates. People want something down at their gate, maybe a button, maybe a gate opener or closer. RF was used. You need to watch. We know someone that's had some metal gates made. The transmitter was put on the other side of the gates, so when the gates were open, you could use the button to close them. But now all of a sudden you put a big metal gate in the way of the receiver and the transmitter, so now you can't actually use it to open them. These are all design considerations you're going to have to think about when looking at RF. Also, RF, it doesn't send a constant signal, it sends one signal. Now that one signal is again via a button to a receiver, and it can be for dimming, opening. I mean, all the applications for these with the transmitting device that you've got, it's pretty much endless. It will send one signal, but what that receiver does with that signal is entirely up to you and the limitations of the manufacturer, really. So you can open, you can close, you can dim, you can shut, you can all of a sudden start to switch on or off. These devices will be limited to their current ratings, typically around about 10 amps, but can go up to about 16 amps. That doesn't limit it to just controlling equipment up to 16 amps. In conjunction with other things, you can carry on, Jake, can't you?
Yeah, again, normally how we operate large loads, we start to put in contactors. This is no different. You can use the contactors on there. The other thing to mention as well, Darren, is the bandwidth which these RF receivers operate on, which is
868 megahertz. Did I remember?
Again, this can be a problem because this can be interrupted. There's a lot of signal or a lot of pieces of equipment that actually operate on that can interrupt that signal that's going from one receiver to another.
Yeah, now again, Jake says about that, and it can be a problem with some other equipment that you've got in the property or adjacent to the property. Some other bandwidths that were used around about the 600 megahertz, that used to get interrupted by anyone turning up with an MC with a walkie-talkie or something like that. So it, again, interference when people used to, the first sort of wireless alarm systems, again, they used to be a problem at one point. But again, now that 868 megahertz, it should be sat there. It should be a secure bandwidth for anyone to use with these. If you're thinking about the buttons being pressed from one to the other, these are totally wireless switches. So again, the solution is fantastic if you don't want to disturb the fabric of the building to rewire, for instance. Maybe you've only got access to the floor voids, so you can get access to lighting, but not to switches. These would allow you to install onto switches. Also, the flexibility of these systems. Smart systems give you more flexibility. So you can have switches in positions where a wall is going to get taken down, for instance, in the future. But because you are starting to install this and you're starting to install it with smart switches, literally just with some Velcro pads, they can be removed or moved to a better position or taken off of a wall that's coming down. So they may not need an electrician to return to actually carry out any maintenance. What it could be is it could literally be you owning the installation, passing it over to the client for them to use in the day-to-day business. And we've seen it lock people into installations. Jake, you've spent quite a lot of time with some people, haven't you, looking at installations, and it's fair to say that they are the bastions or the guardians of that system.
Yeah, so they typically have some sort of maintenance package. The ones I was looking at were sort of high-end stuff, again, which we'll come on to very shortly, but they sort of remotely operated them. If there was any problems with them, they could log in from their office to someone else's home all the way across the world because of the systems that they were using. We start to move on then from RF to Wi-Fi.
Yeah.
Wi-Fi, Darren, is brilliant. Everybody uses it all day. We sit on it on our laptops. We carry them around with us all around the office. And it does what it says on the tin, but again, there is limitations. I feel like I'm just the person that brings the bad news all the time with these protocols, but it does. If you start adding more and more devices to it, the bandwidth on the device itself, or from the router that it emits, will become weaker and weaker and weaker. So if you've got something that's on the second story, for example, and your router's downstairs, chances are that it's not going to always operate the way you want it to, because that signal is being compromised the same way as that RF is with building materials. And as I mentioned already, the metal strapping in new builds that they use to build the walls, that does have a massive effect on that signal.
Yeah, these detrimental effects, they can be managed out. You can hardwire things, but let's not forget, smart installations are meant to be easier, not only for the end user, but probably for the install. So let's try and move away from those. But it's true to say, Jake was talking about there about the protocol, and also Wi-Fi isn't necessarily a quick fix. It will allow you to sometimes use these smart systems within the location. So it's quite a closed network there. Only if then you have the ability through your communications devices, your mobile phones or tablets, you can get access to 3G or someone else's Wi-Fi outside of your property. Would you then also be able to interrogate your smart system, or would you be able to communicate with it to get it to do what you want it to do? So again, it's about understanding where you are with Wi-Fi. Wi-Fi will give a great solution, but it's about, do you have the ability to go external? So they need some sort of gateways. Most properties nowadays, domestic properties, will have their own router, so their own wireless router. In some of these smart installations, though, they need something else, a gateway that we're going to come on to and start to look at with these, to allow you to use a cloud-based system to fully appreciate and make use of all of the functionality of these smart systems. Now, Wi-Fi also, let's get this clear here, not all devices will work off of one Wi-Fi protocol system, Jake, will they?
Well, it's more the bandwidth. So similar to how we spoke about with RF, they operate on two different channels, if you like, one at 2.4 gigahertz and one at 5 gigahertz. The 5 gigahertz is fantastic for close range. So if there's anything in the vicinity with nothing blocking the router, it's normally the 5 gigahertz channel you're going to want to use. The 2.4 though, however, when we start to look at smart technology, that's the one that normally operates with the smart technology. So the 2.4 gigahertz, when you're using Wi-Fi based products that connect to the Wi-Fi, 2.4 gigahertz. And the reason that they use those is, one, because they're less power consumption, and two, it's more reliable over a longer distance. So there's less chance of it breaking down. And again, as you mentioned, if it's breaking down, the chances are that the switches may not operate if you was to use it for a light, for example.
Yeah, so again, this is about knowing your products and understanding the communication protocol when you buy them and specify them for the job you're going to. So rather than buying cameras and just turning up at the clients and hoping that it's going to work, you'll know it will work. It may even mean you have to access the router information on behalf of your client to change it. A lot of them are switchable and changeable, so you can actually access the device itself and then you can change it over. But it's about understanding that. So now traditionally electricians are moving away from just the hardwired stuff to actually starting to be able to access on behalf of the clients maybe to ensure that these smart devices will work. And again, the power consumption that Jake spoke about there, the distances, again, are all things that you need to consider when you're looking at providing those solutions. When you're starting to use these solutions though, another protocol that is used quite a lot is Zigbee, or Jake, Z-Wave is something else that's spoken about. What do these mean?
So they are basically their own type of language in the computing world. Miles and miles above, goes over my head how they operate technically in terms of the language that they speak. Zigbee and Z-Wave, they are pretty much the same product, however they speak two different languages. So it's like a French person and an English person trying to talk to each other. They don't communicate to each other very well.
Not over injections anyway.
So what Zigbee does is it's a gateway. You basically will have a gateway network that operates off the back of the Wi-Fi. So it connects into the router that comes into the property. From that point there, it then speaks its own language to all of the products within that property. The added benefits of having this over just a straight Wi-Fi system is that it can have up to well over 1,000 products, and there's some things that like there's some words out in a minute. There's some tree topology, Darren.
That's it, tree topology. Well done. Stick the old teeth in, Jake.
There's some cool features within Zigbee, which I'll let Darren explain.
Right. Right. So here we go. So yeah. So Jake's talking about there. Them two protocols will create something called a mesh network. So a mesh network is where the devices can or cannot communicate with each other. So Jake, drag up a typical image of a mesh network. Let's take a look at this. So here we go. So this is what Jake was talking about. The device in the middle is the gateway. So they rely on that to start to distribute and collect the communication that's coming out from the Zigbee or Z-Wave or whatever the communication protocol is. That's your gateway to get out, and if you want to control it via devices that aren't directly linked via those two communication protocols. So you can see here where it comes to the message and signal gets sent out from that central device to some of the devices, they're connecting not only direct back to the hub or the gateway there, but to other devices. This is creating a mesh network. So effectively I could take one of them out, and it's not a serial message that's going, it's actually a mesh network connecting to themselves as it goes throughout the installation. Removing one device will not have a negative effect or detrimental effect to any other parts of the electrical system.
Hold on. It will, just to jump in there, Darren, it will if it's a battery operated device, will it not?
Right, yes, so you're absolutely right. So you can see here where we've got the legs of the devices where they're able to talk to each other and pass a signal on, probably extending the signal here, because typically these devices, again, it's suggested manufacturers like us say you can go up to 100 meters clear line of sight. If you want to go on from that a little bit further, you just need to simply keep extending them with wired devices. So these are devices that would rely upon a 230 volt supply. So you can see at the top left of your system, your images there, from the central, it's going out to a light or dimming module there, and again, then on to another one, it's bouncing on. So that is sending the signal on and then receiving the signal and passing it back on the other device's behalf. But the smaller devices that you can see there at the end, on the outskirts of this mesh network, because they're battery operated, they're only able to literally receive the signal and then maybe send the signal back to where it's come from. They cannot then create that signal and pass it on to something else. If they were to do that, literally the battery would not last. So what we've had to do is limit it. So it's called an end device. You've got repeater devices, which you can see there is the hardwired devices, and then you've got the gateway, which makes it all work. So not a pure network, but it is still a mesh network, but it's known, as Jake said earlier on, a tree topology network, where again, the ends of the branches will not have the ability to then push on to other trees. They'll sit there within their own devices.
Just a bit of useful information for you. We've done a lot of tests here at our offices, and across all of the warehouses, we go from one side of the office right the way to the other, which is about 120 meters, adding in devices in between. And that was the maximum distance that we were able to achieve, simply because our building structure is that metal cladding.
Yeah.
We believe that was what was having an effect. But over 120 meters that we actually got to by linking hardwired devices across.
Yeah, so as we spoke there, these are some of the devices that can or can't, and moving on from that, if you're really looking at how you can really make the most out of this, and we spoke earlier on about the positives of these, the fact that it's more accessible, it's greener, because again, you don't have to leave things on anymore, you can turn them off, and all the devices, you can start to put them all together. So all of a sudden, we're not relying upon the device to work in isolation. It will work in conjunction with other devices that are on this smart system. The flexibility and functionality come through looking at the communications. It all goes to this device that we've got there, the hub or the gateway. From there, it starts to access applications. So our lives are going to be ruled by apps and smartphones. So no matter what we do, that is it, Jake. We're all going to be looking at our applications and smartphones for everything we do in the future, and this is the way it's going. So if we start to look at this, there are a few protocols out there, or a few applications, Jake, isn't there, that will bring it all together?
There are, yeah. Just before you say that though, Darren, you don't necessarily have to have the app to go with you. So you don't have to take it with you. You can have it as a standalone device. The app will sit inside your property. If you want to carry your tablet around with you around the house to turn your lights off, etc. Or you could, alternatively, as Darren just mentioned there about devices bringing them together, have something like an Alexa or a Hey Google.
Yes.
They're the two systems that we operate off from our products at ClickSmart Plus. However, there are other ones that, if you wanted to look at the Apple HomePod, for example, there's some manufacturers that will look after that as well. They'll still be operating on Zigbee. It's just a different chipset that needs to go into the Apple devices. What that's going to do is you're going to allow yourself to learn some skills, not you personally, but the Amazon Alexa or Hey Google needs to learn the skill of each manufacturer. So as Darren mentioned, they can all talk to each other, but they need an intermediate person in the middle to make sure that they're all in conjunction with each other. And what I mean by that is basically our products won't directly talk to, let's just say, what sort of product would you say there, Darren?
Your Philips fridge.
Your Philips fridge, yeah. Okay, so they won't talk to your Philips fridge directly. They would need an intermediary.
Yeah, well done, Jake. Yeah, you're good with words tonight, aren't you, mate?
I'm really good with words tonight. So it would need one of those in the middle to make sure that it's all communicating in one big circle.
Yeah, now again, another application that will allow you to do this is called If This Then That, and that's really, again, what we do. This technology brings all different manufacturers together. If this, then that. It is exactly as it says on the tin. So if this happens, then that will happen. So if someone does the Nest doorbell, it will turn on the Philips light, or something like if someone's left the Philips fridge door open, it will not let you turn off the kitchen lights to indicate exactly what's going on there. So if this, then that, and again, has the ability to, again, because we're all using Zigbee and other communication protocols, it brings all the different manufacturers together. So it's really important when you're selecting, again, for your end user, the client there, communication devices that are open protocol or using these common standard protocol types. So it's really, really important that you look for that. I'm just going to take a quick look because some people are asking us again what these devices actually do look like. You can see them all there, but we're going to just rattle through these before we start to look at some of the other systems that you should look out for. So this one here, typical gateway hub, it will just literally connect via the LAN connector there. So just connect to those, Jake, won't it? Yeah. So this one connecting literally wire into the back of your Wi-Fi hub. It's hardwired, but from there it will distribute or it will receive that Zigbee or Z-Wave protocol. The next one we've got for you to share is the smart socket. It's just a socket, but smart allows you to do a number of things with it, doesn't it, Jake?
It does, yeah. Now, these can be a direct replacement. They don't necessarily need to have the hub to operate unless you want them smart. If you want them smart, then you will need to have that gateway hub in place. The benefits and features of these are that they can be locked as well. So each individual rocker switch there can be locked on either side. So if you've got a child that likes to play PlayStation or Xbox late at night, you do have the ability to lock that at set times so they can't manually switch it on or it keep it locked off.
Yeah, now this has been asked, so people are saying that's absolutely great really for public spaces. You can put these in and leave them there, and again, only the people who have access to these can unlock them if and when they want to. So there's applications for it there as well. Something else we've got, Jake, if we start to have a look at what our other, so again, these are switching modules. You can, through smart devices, switch pretty much anything on and off using devices like these. These are typically sort of the size of an MCB. You'll find that manufacturers like us make them DIN rail mountable now. And that's probably because traditionally we used to wire the system in a serial pattern. So definitely lights, we used to wire them serially. But when it looks at smart systems, and this is something you noticed, Jake, wasn't it? Everything tends to get wired back to one central point.
Yeah, it's just for ease really, instead of putting, because sometimes when they connect these in there, you've got single insulated cables, and it's not obviously recommended to put them above ceilings. So what people do is try to take them back to a central point. That way they can operate them and make sure that they're safely connected. Yeah,
so again, wiring them all back. Now, on the larger systems, you'd definitely be wiring back to a central point. You're probably going to be pulling in something like a Cat5 or Cat6 to each, what they call a light switch. It's not a light switch anymore, it's a button, isn't it, to allow you to do what you want to do. That will then go back, and then you've got all the programming around it. Systems like this for domestic installations really reduce the amount of programming. It's down to the end user pretty much how they want to use it. This, through the Zigbee, will communicate to the gateway. The gateway again will be your access point via the application or the smart devices that you put on in place of a switch. So the switches can look like normal switches nowadays, can't they, Jake?
Yeah, so with the switching modules, exactly as Darren mentioned there, you can use absolutely any switch you want. You'll notice the one in the middle does have a neutral connection. The other two that on the left and right hand side of those, the one in the middle, that they don't require a neutral. So that's another added benefit that our product has when offering it to your clients. So if they don't want to be pulling in cables or you don't have a neutral at a switch, you can simply use the ones that don't require a neutral. The reason the one in the middle requires that neutral, Darren, is because it is a 10 amp version. There's going to be a lot of load potentially going through that, so they want to make sure that it's
yeah. I mean, I remember back in the good old days, if I ever took a neutral to a light switch, I used to get absolutely roasted by the electricians on site. But now we're nearly all doing it, aren't we? So this will be able to sit there, or if you're wiring it back centrally, you can do that also. Anywhere where you can switch on and off, you can dim if you want as well. So very simply, there are dimming. So again, pretty much the same as what you've seen before. Again, just sit either centrally or you can locate them throughout the installation, and it'll give you that flexibility. These are wired devices. So these take a signal, repeat that signal on, and then receive a signal back and then pass it on its behalf. So they can do that. These are wired devices. What aren't wired devices are some of the other ones where they will just receive a signal and that's only one way. So PIR sensors, for instance, this is a battery operated. Again, this was the limitation here. It's on the energy consumption. This will receive the that Zigbee protocol signal there, again, to send that one back in. That's all it will do. We'll never repeat anything on. But typically, this one, you can have it pick up something through the application, through the settings. You can have it turn on a light, you can have it turn on a socket, the spurs that you can turn on, so turn on heaters maybe, turn on infrared. Literally, it's endless, absolutely endless, the possibilities for use of these. So that's one of the devices. What the other battery operated ones?
Window door sensor. So again, this can be used almost like a security device, or you could potentially use it to say that if the windows are open, you don't want the heating to come on at any point.
Yeah, that's the green side. Yeah.
For some reason, my partner seems to think that's a good idea.
That's acceptable in your house, isn't it?
Open the windows and put the heating on. Doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, and again, this again will enable smart credentials to be applied to installations and properties moving forward. So again, definitely technology like that, where this will kick into heating systems or into individually thermostatic radiators. We're hearing that they're all going to be electric in the future anyway. Stuff like this is going to be almost fitted throughout, we believe. Some of the other stuff that we've got, Jake, as well, just to quickly go through these, temperature and humidity stats. So this can, again, when you're looking at assisted living, one thing that we have identified is quite a lot of elderly will not put heating on for fear of the fact they can't can't afford it. If you've got this for assisted living, you can be in control of this. So you can say, look, I know when you're cold or when it drops below, it switches on itself and it looks after that, and we can together manage your energy consumption, or the fact that you've got left things on when you shouldn't be in the room and stuff like that. So you can start to apply these to the individual and make them bespoke for that individual. And then when they've moved on or something's happened, you can, if flexibility is in these systems, you can change it and alter it by just sitting and reapplying the applications for it. So you can do those. And then the other devices there, Wi-Fi, smart card. Now we go back to Wi-Fi here, Jake. Why are we going back to Wi-Fi for cameras?
The reason I go back to Wi-Fi is to do with the firewalls that sit within the Wi-Fi software. Not to say that Zigbee isn't safe at all, it's completely safe. However, when it comes to cameras, we believe that it needs to be ultra safe. And so we're going back to Wi-Fi for this one, because of the 2 firewalls. As long as nobody gets access to any of your Wi-Fi passwords, there's no chance of anybody ever getting into these cameras. Benefits of these ones are that they're small, easy to install. You can literally just tag them to a wall with self-adhesive.
Yeah.
Just go in there. They've got talk features on them as well, so you can talk to one person in the room and can then talk back to you, similar to like a walkie-talkie.
Yeah.
And they can take still images, and they can store those images on an SD card as well.
Yeah, yeah. Now this, again, this typically what you're seeing here of all sorts of cameras, all camera types are, they're at the lower threshold of the bandwidth, Jake, aren't they? So they're at 2.4 gigahertz.
Yep.
So, and the reason for that is we don't know how far they're going to be from the router. So they keep it at that, plus the power consumption is lower. That's the reason for keeping these there. So if you're putting these up, they're not working straight away. It's purely because, again, you need to access the router and change that one. That's looking
just to mention as well with this Wi-Fi smart camera, Darren, I know that we've said that you need the gateway or the hub, as we call it here.
Yeah, you wouldn't for this, would you?
You don't need one of those hubs to operate this Wi-Fi smart camera. So if you was thinking about perhaps looking at a baby monitor or anything like that, for example, you could set this up without actually having that hub, and you could use that as a baby monitor. I know I'm certainly going to be using it.
I've also, during the pandemic, lots of people have gone out and got pets, and dogs is the big thing that people are getting. Now we're all returning to work, people are getting these because they don't want to leave the dog on its own for God knows how long. So I can appreciate that one as well. So yeah, there's those. The other thing we've got here, and again, a lot of people are looking for smart Wi-Fi plugs. We've looked at the other ones that can be locked, can be done. You can do exactly the same with these, but these rely upon the Wi-Fi protocol instead of the Zigbee, and it's a lower end of the price spectrum as well. If you look at the sockets, although they're priced competitively, there's a lot more in them than the Wi-Fi. So again, this wouldn't need that gateway hub, so you can start to look for those. If we consider though all of these systems, you're able to install these retrospectively. You can install these as from brand spanking new. It's not going to be blowing the pockets of the people that are asking for them. Having said that, if you're looking for a truly smart system, which is known as a SHE system, Jake, is it? Yeah, which stands for what?
Smart home head end.
Right, okay, so yeah, so this is where we really are going to get all our Cat5 cables and we wire them back to one central location. That is where we're going to distribute our communications out for. And this is going to be KNX, probably DALI systems, Jake, where you're looking for those, or 0 to 10 volt dimming. Typically, we've seen this in commercial installations. It's all starting to come now into the domestic market as well. There's also DALI 2 protocol out there as well, which has been around for not too long. I think it's been out for a couple of years now, so that's been out again. So that technology moves on, and that is again around programming. You'd have to sit really centrally program this. The complete differences with the majority of the stuff that you're seeing us talk about here around domestic properties is it's pretty much all via an app, and the apps are very, very easy to use. The big thing to talk about with applications is security. Jake mentioned it earlier on when he spoke about the communications that comes with Wi-Fi. And again, it's about how you really interact with your client, your client there. To set this up, what we can do here is we can set it up on a device of our own, and we can then send that information to the client, and we'll never get access to anything that such as any passwords or any security settings, any firewalls. It's completely separate. So you have the ability to transfer this data on, then take control and ownership of the system after you finish programming it on their behalf, and you can simply just walk away from it and you'll store nothing. So it's in line with GDPR and everything else that you need to do. And again, that's a big consideration when you're moving into this environment, or you're thinking of moving into this, you need to really ensure that that data is something that you really are thinking about, because holding data on behalf of customers is something you really need to be geared up about, and it's not for the faint-hearted, really. So we've spoken about all of these technologies, Jake, and we've put it out there about what communication protocol. If you want to put any questions to us, please put it either in the chat or put it in the questions, and we can take questions as we start to get towards the end. We've done almost 45 minutes now with the introduction from Luke as well. We've mentioned there the ability to the bottom end, looking at Bluetooth and the limitations of it, RF and the limitations of it, Wi-Fi plus the limitations of Wi-Fi, and then we've spoken about the virtues of Zigbee as well, and also where it can or can't be used, plus Z-Wave that moves into it. We've looked at the communications protocol and where it moves into applications as well, and we've looked at how those communication protocols can work with applications and make it much more simpler for the end user. So we've gone through an awful lot with you in our short time with you this evening. So again, if you've got any questions, please put them in and we'll pick them up.
I suppose the question to ask is, has anybody installed any of this, not necessarily our products, but smart stuff as well? Are you getting more and more phone calls? I know a lot of people are getting phone calls for the Ring doorbells. They seem to be absolutely
Well, so yeah, Ring doorbells, that tends to be the one. Again, I think because we're all at home, we're probably not reliant upon them, but I think when we start to leave homes, I think it will be something for peace of mind and security, isn't it, really? So people will start to pick up on those. So yeah, again, if you've got any questions, please put them to this, but if not, we can introduce Luke again and have a chat about some of the stuff we've delivered.
Yeah, I was just going to say, what a fabulous presentation there. I think you've covered such a range of
we're not quite hearing you there, Luke.
I think it'd be very difficult if you haven't answered any queries that people might have. I think what was really useful was the fact that you touched on the design considerations, especially with all the big push for retrofitting buildings, all the silver-backed installation that's going to be put into buildings. Having that mesh network is going to be critical for people having this connectivity going forward.
It really has got to be that. It's got to be that key, isn't it? So no longer can we rely upon just a distance between them to be the go-to. It's got to be, I want to get to there, but I've got to go via B or C to get there first. That's it.
Exactly. So having that mesh thing is going to be critical. So these are the things that the installers really want to know, like how they're going to do all these things out there. And the fact that you were saying that it's quite often now that you wire these back to a central hub. So it's a new way of considering how they're going to be putting in the wiring system. So all this is great information for them to take on board. I think that was another thing that you pointed out there, that the installers can remotely go in when requested to fault find on a system. So that saves interruption, especially with the COVID times where people are bit wary of interaction with humans. The fact that an installer can jump on the app, interrogate the system, find out if there is an issue, or if the fact is that the client has actually just changed their router and hasn't plugged it all in.
User error tends to be the majority of the problems with these. It tends to be user error. But again, you can help and guide. What you're picking up on there, Luke, is that literally electrical traditional systems, they think anyone can wire them, anyone can come in to maintain them. That isn't the case with these. If you tend to install it, it tends to be always you that goes back and maintains it. Even if that homeowner has moved on, they'll find that they'll still come back to you. The new occupants will come back to you. So there's a little bit of longevity on the project that you've got there.
Yeah, it's good repeat business, isn't it? And also the smart home systems tend to sell by virtue of the people purveying how good they are. People love tech. They love talking about gadgets, and so then it's the keeping up with the Joneses and that kind of who installed that? Oh, try Joe Bloggs to XYFM or whatever. And so yeah, it's a really good thing that people should be getting into, and the opportunities in this are endless as well. How would installers, do you run training programs or affiliation programs? How would our guys get in contact and
If they
get
want
on
to know
this.
more about what we've got to offer them, then they've only got to really look at the Scolmore.com website. We've got lots of information on there, and through there as well, they can contact us regarding training. Just simply go through to our customer service team by emailing them. We will endeavour to deliver training on this, bespoke training on this, so they can leave knowing all about our systems, how to connect them, how not to connect them, and then how to make them work, so we can go through all of that with them. At the minute, we are doing all our training via Zoom, so it's all distance learning. However, we are only too happy when the restrictions are lifted to invite as many people as possible to here to carry out one of our installer workshops, where people can get hands-on training and leave knowing more about smart systems.
Fantastic. I think that would be great, because people do like to. I mean, there's so much you can absorb via Zoom and Teams, etc. But it's really good to get your hands. Well, you're not even getting them dirty these days, are you? But you're getting your hands on with them. But the fact that you spoke about the case study, being able to have this working across 120 meters in your building, just shows how rigid, not how rigid, but how strong these systems are, and that it's applicable for any building, domestic, commercial. The range that that this can be installed into. Yeah,
I mean, it was first of all designed and thought about for being purely for domestic installations. However, we've seen the virtues of it here within our commercial environment, so we know full well that it is out there, and once people start picking up on it, it will be for people, commercial, retail especially as well, where they want these maybe for some lights to come on when the shop is shut and stuff like that. Again, this is where we're going to start to see this technology take in.
And I think as well, small offices that, you know, some people or a small medium enterprise, we say, where the owner's gone out for the day and he sometimes doesn't maybe trust his employees to lock up correctly. He can check his cameras. He can make sure that all the window and door sensors are shut. He can also make sure that all the lights are off as well. And if they're not, then he can obviously either address the windows and doors that are open. And he can also control the fact that if there's any lights on, he can just do that remotely as well.
Yeah, we know of school caretakers in the past that have used this technology. So after when they rented the hall out for whatever step aerobics or whatever's going on, rather than them having to then put the clobber back on and go back down, lock up and set the alarm or whatever, they've literally just checked the cameras, made sure everyone's out, checked the PIRs, made sure there's nothing coming back from there, and then they've locked it remotely. So again, it saves that one person being unsecure, walking around a property, and just to have that ability to do that has proved endless.
Exactly. There's so many options there, and with the move for energy efficiency, etc., you can remote, like you said about the if this then that, but also the timing controls. You can make sure that all the coffee machines, printers, everything else is turned off when people leave. So there's huge benefits from that. I guess one of the questions that may come about on the energy thing is, do these devices use to be turned on? I'm guessing they're ultra low efficient, high efficient, low consumption.
Next to nothing, they do use some consumption, so it's always probably best for us to mention that before anyone says that.
There is again, they are ultra low consumption, so they are literally looking to send a communication signal, which the Zigbee will do. So again, you're taking off a bog standard 13 amp socket outlet that has no energy consumption while it sits there dormant. These, even in their dormant state, will be looking to, because they are creating that mesh network, they will be looking to consume some, but it is absolutely minuscule.
And I guess because the data being sent between these things is such a, no need for a high consumptive device to operate that, is it really? So I think that'll be really good for people to know. You've got it. Yeah, exactly that. Excellent. One last thing, you said that this works well with the Hey Google and the Alexa, but I think it's important that people understand this does still work with the Apple stuff, just via the app. It just doesn't link in with their ecosystem.
Well, our products actually will not operate with the Apple stuff, and the reason they don't is because Apple have their own special chip that sits inside of them, which tends to be quite hard to get hold of, and to get on their approved list, you've got to jump through some pretty big hoops. So at the moment, we're just sticking with the Alexa and the Hey Google.
I understand that for their ecosystem, but they can still operate your devices via an app. Is that correct?
Yes. So yeah. So I've got an Apple device and I use the app for my ClickSmart Plus stuff. So yeah, I use it for those. The only thing I can't do is I can't scream at my Apple speaker and it asks to do things. I can of the Alexa one, and in fact we're in a room where there is an Alexa, so the fact that we're saying Alexa now meant that we had to turn it off, otherwise you'd see these lights behind me and Jake start to come on and off. So.
Oh no. But yeah, I just wanted to make sure people realise that it would still work off their Apple phones, and they wouldn't. Yeah, I think that's
absolutely. The application is enabled for Apple devices and enabled for Android devices. So yes, definitely.
And through that, they could use the this then that app to do the behind the scenes things, can't they? So they can still get nearly all the functionality.
Well, actually, on our app itself, you can actually do the tap to run scenes and the automation directly from our app as well. So if you're just using our products, and if you want to say you open the front door, you could set it up to say that once that sensor's broken, it would then turn on the hallway lights as well.
You can do that, yeah.
Also, it's got an astronomical clock, so that when it sort of the sun sets, if you had outside lights on, maybe some socket lights under your garage or something like that, it would be able to bring that on at a set time as well and turn it off as soon as the sun sets.
Oh, seamless, perfect, excellent. Well, I think you guys have, certainly more than delivered on the information front. I can't see any other questions coming through, so I guess unless you have anything more to add.
No, like I say, the only real big thing for us is if people do want some information, they can go to Scolmore. So if you go
to clicksmart.com, it will ask you about ClickSmart and ClickSmart Plus. ClickSmart Plus is the latest technology that we have. We did have a predecessor. It's been revamped. It's now ClickSmart Plus. You go into the website there, and all of the products and information on there is on there.
Can you share the SGTV? Because we've got some how-to videos going to come along. So SGTV is for people with regard to how-tos. Looking at solution building for these again, so it sits on YouTube. SGTV sits there. It's got loads of other bumps as well, information for the end users to look at as well.
Fantastic. And watching this, heads over to YouTube when they finish.
Great, we'd love it.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much for your time. It's been a pleasure sitting on this with you guys, and look forward to seeing you when things open up.
Yeah, look forward to it. Take care until then.
Take care. See you later. Bye-bye.